Git, as well as being British slang for a fairly unpleasant person, is a very widely used version control system. And essentially it provides the programmer with two things. One is the ability to roll back to previous versions of software if mistakes are discovered or features want to be removed at some point in the future. And the other is a way for large groups of people to work together on software projects and all hopefully be reasonably clear what the others are doing and what changes they've made with each version of the software. If you want to find out more about Git, then this site is a great start, but we're going to dive straight in and see how we can use Git with Xcode. Xcode actually has Git built in, so it's really easy to get set up. So we'll create a new project, call it Git demo, and there's a box there next to source control saying create Git repository on my Mac. We've ignored that up until now, but now make sure you tick that box and click create. And there we go. Git is all set up on our project. And the main difference is that you'll now see a menu called source control and various other options like checkout, commit, push, pull, etc. We're going to be covering the main features of Git, which is pretty much all you'll need to use as an iOS developer. So let's go over to viewcontroller.swift and add a little bit of code. So we'll keep things very simple. Print hello world. So let's say I'm very pleased with this bit of code and I want to save it to make sure if I make any mistakes later on, I can roll back to this version. Obviously, in reality, you generally wouldn't make a save at this point. You would probably wait maybe at the beginning of your coding career every sort of 5, 10, 15 minutes. You might do a save or a commit, and later on you might do it every hour or even every day if you were feeling very bold. But that's completely up to you as a programmer how often you want to do it. The point is, once you get to a point where you'd like to save your work, you go to source control and commit. So committing is essentially like creating a saved version of your project. If you were the sort of person when you were working on documents at school, you might have saved as you went along, and essay version 1, essay version 2, essay version 3, etc. Essay final version 2, etc. And this is what Git is essentially doing for you. So if we have a look over on the left, you can see there's one file here with an M for modified next to it. And if we click on that file, it is of course viewcontroller.swift, and we can see the original version of the file here. And then it's clearly describe the change that it now has hello world in it and a couple of extra lines as well that it didn't have before. So if we decide we want to commit this change, we tick the box. And then we write a description of what we've actually accomplished. So hello world added, something like that. And then we commit the file. Simple as that. So now let's say we carry on working and we do some very complex code, something like that. And we perhaps want to go back to a previous version. Well, this is where we use the double arrows, show the version editor that we saw right back at the beginning of the course, but we haven't looked at since. So now you can see we can go back to this version if we want to, and we can go back to the original version as well if we want to do that. So if we want to revert to this version, we can discard the change and then revert, and now we're back where we were before. So that's the main benefit in terms of being able to roll back to previous versions. But there's a lot more to Git than just saving different versions and essentially saving an undo button. One way that we can use the power of Git, especially if we're working with other people, is to create a new branch. And this is something that we might do, let's say, if we're working on an experimental feature for our app. So say we're about to work on something that we're not convinced is going to work, or we're not certain we actually want to integrate it into the app itself. then we could start a new branch of the app and now be working on that branch, and we might bring our work into the main branch at some point if we decide that it was good. So let's do a little bit of work. We'll do it on main storyboard this time. You can see we've now got the text version of main storyboard. So this is the XML that actually stores main storyboard. And that's what we see if we use the version control view on main storyboard. So let's bring in a button. So simple as that. And this is my experimental feature. Incidentally, we can now then see the changes that have been made to the text behind that. So you can see we've got a version change, another version change, a custom module introduced, and most relevantly, this is our button that we've brought in. And now that we've got our button, let's also create a quick IB action for it. Just so we've got a change to the viewcontroller.swift file as well. Okay, so this is going to be our experimental feature. Not particularly experimental, but you get the idea. So to bring back the content from our experimental feature into the main branch, we're going to merge from our current branch into the main branch. So merge into branch, and then we've only got one other branch, so we're going to merge into that. And that will then merge the master branch with our own branch, our new experimental feature branch, and bring it all together as one. So if we click merge, you can see we've now got our experimental feature as part of the main branch. If you're wondering which branch we're actually on at the moment though, you can check in source control, and then in fact you can see it there, experimental feature, that's the branch that we're on. You can also see it if you look in configure, get demo, and then branches, you can see which branch we're currently on. So as we've already completed our experimental feature, we really want to go back onto the current branch. So we can do that using switch to branch, and then we just switch to the master branch, and now we're working on that branch. And if, for example, I add some code there, and then I switch over to the experimental feature branch, then that code is gone. If I switch back, then it's still gone because I didn't commit it. So when you switch away from the branch, you lose everything other than the latest commit. So let's just see that in action. Add some more code and then commit that. There we go. So this has now been added, committed to the main branch. So now if I switch over to the experimental feature branch, that won't have that code. But if I switch back, it will now have saved that code. There we go, because it was committed. And that's more or less all you're likely to need to do. Essentially just commit regularly so that you can roll back whenever you need, and occasionally switch branches if you're working on a particular side, be part of the final project. So I hope that's given you a bit of an overview of how Git works and how we can use it with Xcode. We're now going to go on and look at how we use another relatively recent addition to the iOS feature set, and that is Touch ID.